For me, it boils down to 4 core areas, which is mindset, which we've just started to touch on before, unwinding, food, and low tox living. So they're kind of the 4 main categories, I would say, that really everyone with a thyroid condition, as you say, whether it's hypo, whether it's autoimmune or not, is going to have to deal with those issues at some point in time, over time, and preferably not all at once, or you'll get overwhelmed and throw the baby out with the bathwater and do nothing. So that's what I think. Like we just started to touch on mindset. I think that's really where we need to start. It's often not where we start because maybe that's the way it works. So sometimes we've got to get back. It's got to get worse before we can wrap our heads around some of those changes.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. Today I have on the show Annabel Bateman, and Annabel is a Hashimoto's patient, author, advocate, and coach. And she has learned in the 25 plus years of living with Hashimoto's that the key is developing a lifestyle that supports and doesn't stress her thyroid health. And she draws on skills learned in previous careers as a lawyer, a life coach, family law mediator, and author. She really works to empower and educate women. And that's exactly what we're talking about in this episode. Where, we've taken kind of a sciencey approach before talking about the thyroid. Annabel is full on practical methods here. We're talking about lifestyle changes, and she calls these the 4 pillars. We're going to go through her 4 pillars that she talks about in her book, Let's Talk Thyroid. It's all practical things you can implement now to help out your thyroid. So you don't have to live dealing with the stress that can come from a Hashimoto's or a hyperthyroidism, any diagnosis that has to deal with your thyroid. And so we're going through all of these practical steps that you can take now, that you can start implementing now. These are such easy places to start that don't require really complicated lab testing or supplements or anything else. It's all lifestyle. You might want to take notes in this episode. She has a lot of great takeaways here. Let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Annabel, and we are talking all things thyroid today, but a little different approach is we're talking about the more practical side of things, talking about lifestyle approach to dealing with your thyroid and thyroid health. Thank you so much for joining us today, Annabel.
Oh, that's my pleasure, Hope. I'm excited to be here. I've just been editing the podcast that you're coming onto my show. And so I feel like I'm just kind of hanging out with you at the moment.
I love it. It's so funny. I love that. So y'all definitely go back and check out the episode I did and go check out Annabel's podcast and the episode we did on her podcast. So excited to hear that. Yeah. So, she got up early. She took her kids to school, and now she's ready for the day because she's down in Australia. So we thank her for getting up and getting ready for us in this episode. So Annabel, let's start with, because I feel like your story plays a pretty important role in what you do as the thyroid expert that you are. So you kind of tell us your story with, your journey with your thyroid and how you got into this space.
Sure, absolutely. And I think like all thyroid stories, they're long stories. So I'm trying to make it short. And I do often say that because I often ask people, tell me a bit about your story, your thyroid story. And they're usually long. Like it's not usually a quick story because thyroid's complex, and we're going to I'm sure we'll get into some of that. Yeah. So I think my thyroid story began around puberty, which is a common trigger time. Well, changes in hormones are common trigger times for thyroid conditions. So puberty, pregnancy, menopause. But I only say that because I can only look back and try to guess that because I was diagnosed when I was 22. But when I look back, I really believe my thyroid story started at puberty. That's when all the signs and symptoms kind of kicked in. I can look back and see photos, and I can see an increasing kind of puffiness, weight gain, brittle hair, dry skin, often those common symptoms. And I was tired, but just kept pushing through. So those kind of things that I know now are kind of common thyroid things, but this was back in the 80s too. So there wasn't, I think in the end, mainstream medical are still treating thyroid in the same way it was back then. So maybe things haven't changed as much. But back then, I don't think we were kind of as tuned in often to those health things. I think I went on every 80s diet. I just can't think about grapefruit and cottage cheese without, keeping eating. And so I was on every possible diet, I think, in the 80s, 90s, I feel like I spent half my life on a diet. But and we can come to that. But look, in the end, it got to the point where I was in my last year of my degree at uni, holding down multiple part-time jobs, lots of, I think you said on my podcast, you're one of these go, go, go people. I'm a go, go, go person. And what I've learned with at least thyroid health, but probably autoimmune disease generally from some of the research I've done, is it's not uncommon actually to be that kind of person. You just push through. You're often kind of fairly driven, so you don't give up easily. And they're all good qualities, right? But when your body's trying to give you a signal to say, slow down, stop, help.
Right.
We're not always good at tuning into that.
Yeah, for sure.
So by the time I got to 22, I was pretty shattered. If I look back at photos then, my hair was really frizzy. I was quite puffy around the face. I put on a lot of weight. But the symptom that really got me to go to the doctor and check it out was I had long hair then. If you're not watching this, I've got very short hair. But I used to have long hair and I just couldn't hold my arms up to wash and dry my hair.
Oh, wow.
My muscle fatigue was was just like I'd hold my arms up and I was like, I just can't hold the hairdryer up for long enough to dry my hair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not normal.
Right.
So I went off and look, my mum's a nurse and she was the one that, whilst she says, she feels bad, she didn't pick it up earlier. She did pick it up then. And she said, I think there's something wrong with your thyroid. Go to the doctor, get it checked. And so I was lucky in that I didn't have a lot of the problems that a lot of people have in getting a thyroid diagnosis.
Yeah.
I went to the doctor. They probably did just test the TSH. They probably didn't. I've gone back and I'm a bit of a record keeper, and I can't find antibody tests back that far. But my TSH, which is meant to be, if you're listening and you're not sure, your TSH was your thyroid stimulating hormone. It's not really a thyroid test, but it's the most common one that the doctors do.
Right.
It's meant to be under 4 and ideally probably under 2.5. Well, mine was 184.
Holy moly. Wow.
So the doctor's like, I think you need to see an endocrinologist like tomorrow.
Yeah, like now.
how are you? Like now, how are you even alive?
Functioning,
just press on. So I was lucky in that sense that just go, and so I did see an endocrinologist who pretty much just said, you've got hypothyroidism. You'll need to take thyroid replacement hormones for the rest of your life. You'll be fine. Off you go.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And I think I was trying to be all independent at 22 and go to the doctor by myself, which was a terrible idea. I should have taken my mum, really.
Yeah.
Just probably for no reason, just to have someone else there to hear and listen and ask questions. Because when you're really that kind of out of it, really, you do need someone else. So I remember sitting in the car afterwards and just crying, like, I'm 22. How can I be on medication for the rest of my life? Like, this is really, he was quite, as often it seems to be the case, quite dismissive, like, it's just an underactive thyroid. You'll be fine. Just take a pill, get on with your life. Off you go. And so that's really what I did for quite a long time. And look, obviously that helped significantly because my thyroid function was so low. Like I definitely needed thyroid medication.
Yes.
And I guess what I would say is I've learned, and what we're going to really, I think, dive into this conversation is I have learned that there is just so much more that can be done for your thyroid health and to feel better than just take that pill. Now, I still take thyroid medication. I've tried the different kinds of thyroid medications over the years, but I'm back on the levothyroxine, your stock standard T4 synthetic hormone replacement. That seems to be the best of a bad bunch for me. I don't know that it's necessarily great, but none of the others that I've tried have been significantly better. And so I've sort of ended up back on that. And so I'm very much an advocate for, if you need thyroid hormone replacement, you need it. Like your body actually needs thyroid hormone to function. It's not one of these optional extras, but it's not the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
There's many more things you can do. And really, I think if you want to thrive and feel great, you have to do some of the other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it all comes down to, I think I know with a lot of the thyroid clients I've worked with, the doctors have so much trouble, and you might have gone through a similar thing. They have so much trouble, finding the right dose. And so they're constantly increasing and trying this and trying. And then a lot of my clients, and I don't know if you experience side effects with yours, but they get on such a high dose and they start to get all these side effects. And they're like, well, now I feel like I'm having panic attacks all the time because it's like giving me anxiety, all this medication, where it's like you said, like if we can do, like if you need the thyroid hormone, take the thyroid hormone, but there's other things we can do to help the thyroid. So it's not just about, well, let's just keep increasing the meds, to help your thyroid out.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, yeah, you're right. And I think it probably takes a couple of years. I mean, I'm not medically trained, so I wouldn't want to, say, but I think often it seems that it takes some time to settle on the right dose.
Right.
And your body's adjusting all the time and going through different stresses at different times. And if you're not addressing diet and lifestyle factors, then it probably makes it harder, So yeah, I just think it does take time. And that's one of the things that is just getting our head around that. I think when we're newly diagnosed, it's probably helpful to try as best as you can to take a long-term mindset and think, you can put yourself in remission, you can get your thyroid hormones operating functionally, but it is something that you've got to deal with for the rest of your life. And so I think once you've got your head around that, that's a good thing in that we've got a long time to try lots of different things. And we don't have to get it all right or perfect.
Right.
There's no such thing as health perfection, as much as I've tried to achieve it. Not possible. We don't have to get it all right in the first 3 months after we're diagnosed. Right. That's completely unrealistic. And so I think just knowing that, we maybe give ourselves a bit more grace.
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at some of the lifestyle pieces that you teach about and you have a book about. The lifestyle pieces that can really make a difference and be kind of this supportive piece, whether it's along with medication or without medication. But there's a lot of lifestyle things because I think, like you said, a lot of, unfortunately, the Western medical world, that's pretty much it, right? You go in for symptoms and they give you medication. That's just what they're trained to do, right? And so they don't have a whole lot of conversation. Although I will say, it's funny we're talking about this because earlier today I had a call with a client and she has hypothyroidism. And she was so excited to tell me this today on our call because she just switched doctors because she didn't like her other doctor. And her endocrinologist actually had a conversation with her today about gluten. And I have never, and working with any of my clients, had any doctors tell them like, hey, you should stop eating gluten. But she already knew that because we talked about it. But she's like, oh my gosh, the doctor actually talked to me about diet with, and so it was like a novel thing. Like, oh, imagine that. The doctor's talking about diet changes. So
that's impressive for an endocrinologist.
I know. I thought the same thing. I was really impressed. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I was really impressed. So as far as lifestyle things and the big strategies that people dealing with hyper or hypo, right? Either way, with a thyroidism, what are some of the things that we can start to look at as far as lifestyle that can help?
Yeah. So I think I kind of talk about 4 main categories, and there's probably lots of things within that, and it's certainly not exclusive. Like there's probably lots more than that. But for me, it boils down to 4 core areas, which is mindset, which we've just started to touch on before, unwinding, food, and low tox living. So they're kind of the 4 main categories, I would say, that really everyone with a thyroid condition, as you say, whether it's hypo, even whether it's autoimmune or not, is going to have to deal with those issues at some point in time, over time, and preferably not all at once, or you'll get overwhelmed and throw the baby out with the bathwater and do nothing. So that's what I think. Yeah, like we just started to touch on mindset. I think that's really where we need to start. It's often not where we start because maybe that's the way it works. So sometimes it's got to get worse before we can wrap our heads around some of those changes. But the reality is none of us, I think we were talking about this the other day because we were talking on my podcast with you about adrenal health, and I was just saying I'm just taking a break from coffee. And in the end, I'm not going to change anything unless I really have to. Yeah. That's the bottom line. I don't think anyone wants to actually change unless we actually have to.
Exactly. It's human nature.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when it comes, it's that mindset of, okay, all right, well, now I've got a thyroid problem. I am going to have to learn how to deal with it. I'm going to have to learn how to manage it from a holistic perspective.
Right.
All right. Now I've got to take some time, and it does take some time to wrap my head around. This is the mindset, wrap your head around the long-term aspect. All right. There are going to be some lifestyle changes. Okay. I don't have to do it all at once, but there's probably a bit of, I'm going to have to do something and some things, and it's going to take a bit of playing around with, and that's okay.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I think just be kind with yourself in that process, because, and it takes time. And each time there's something new that pops up, because this is a lifelong journey, there'll be new little mindset things.
Right.
Like with me in the coffee, I'm like, oh, I've given up gluten and dairy, and, like, really, coffee? That was my one little thing, And I'm still not saying at this point I've given it up, but I'm, 3 weeks into having a break. And that was another little mindset shift.
Yeah.
But you get better. I was quick. It was like, right, okay, good, done. I'm off, I'm taking a break. It was okay. But I've got the attitude that at least at this point, it's a break. It's not, I'm giving it a trial. Right. And I think even with the big things like gluten, you can just give it a 30-day trial.
Right.
See how you feel.
Right. Yeah. And I think it goes down to, the whole premise about basically looking goals for the short term. If you look at it as forever, I have to give up gluten forever, it sounds horrible. But if you just kind of look at it just little, let me do it for a week or two, and then let me do it for another, but just kind of taking it little steps at a time. So you're not looking at it from the bird's eye view, but just little steps, because it does get, well, and especially if it's a big change, you're used to eating gluten all the time, or if it's coffee, for your example, and it's it sounds horrible. But if you're able to look at it okay, let me do it for a week. Let me try it a little bit at a time. I think that's the mindset piece for sure. I think that's a huge, well, and the other thing I think is not letting the diagnosis define you, right? And make that I am my Hashimoto's diagnosis or whatever, right? And not letting that define you, but it's just a part of you, right? I don't know if you come into contact with that with the women you work with, having to kind of separate themselves from the diagnosis and not be defined by it and let it rule your identity,
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that one, isn't it? And it can and again, that's this thing that I think takes time, and it's not like having a broken leg that in 6 weeks it's
exactly,
you can kind of identify with, I'm a person with a broken leg,
right?
But in 8 weeks' time, you're not going to be a person with a broken leg. But in 8 weeks' time, you're still going to be a person with a thyroid condition.
Yep, it's tricky.
So it is tricky. I think that often what comes into that mindset is it becomes a negative spiral.
Yes.
I've got Hashimoto's. I don't have energy. I'm just fat. I'm never going to get out of this.
Yes.
Life is miserable. My thyroid hates me. And it just goes down in a spiral.
Totally.
And so I think that's where some of those, I talk a bit in the book about affirmations, and I know they can sound really fake sometimes, but it's that retraining your neural pathways to think differently. And sometimes it just takes a bit of faking it till you make it.
Totally.
And if that, just to okay, all right, I have Hashimoto's, I'm not Hashimoto's.
Right.
And just do some of that reframing. I've got no energy. Right. Okay. I know I don't have energy, but there are actions I can take. I'm taking action to improve my thyroid health, and that will give me more energy.
Yeah.
Or I'm always tired. Okay. Well, why don't you reframe that to, I'm working on my sleep so that I can have more energy. Or, there's lots of different ways we've just got to learn to catch those little thought processes and be able to reframe them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I love that. So then what is the unwinding part that you talk about?
So the unwinding part is the stress management part. And I guess I like the word unwinding because it's a bit more proactive and it's a bit more positive than stress,
manage stress.
Stress, manage stress just sounds a bit hard work and boring. Unwinding sounds like, that sounds quite nice.
It does.
And we know, because we were talking all about adrenals recently, just how critical stress management is to thyroid health. And it's something that I have found increasingly, actually, for my own thyroid health, is that I can have a stressful event, period of time, and it doesn't have to be the death of a loved one or like a major life stress.
Mm-hmm.
But I've just worked out that my system, and I think it's often the case, particularly with autoimmune thyroid conditions, our thyroid's super, super, super sensitive to stress or to lots of things, but stress is a key one. And it doesn't take a lot for that to throw my thyroid function out.
Yeah, for sure.
And so increasingly, I think it's super important that we learn to manage stress well. And that's why, I've got a whole section on unwinding. And I think, lots of things that you talk about all the time, like your breath work and meditation. And even in that, it's understanding your own personality and what's going to work for you and what's not. And unwinding for someone who is naturally a more chilled out, relaxed person might look very different to unwinding for someone who is a bit more
high strung.
High strung. I was going to say high strung, but I'm like, I don't know if I like that. But yeah, highly strung. Yeah.
Yeah. We know what you mean.
A bit more kind of,
Yes. Yes.
And so I think it's about finding out what works for each of us. And that's going to be different. Just like the mindset piece is going to be different and the food's going to be different. But there are themes that we've all got to address, and ability to say no, set boundaries, work within our personality, find some tools that work for us to help us unwind is far more important than we think it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, and I love the piece about finding what works for you, because it does look different for everybody. Because I know, like, I am a full on, and everybody knows this about me, I'm a full on proponent of meditation. Like, I love meditation. It's changed my life. And I will say, like, number one, that's the thing you should be doing for, mindfulness and stress management. But it's not always that simple for people. And especially if you are talking about a high strung person, like asking them to just sit still and quiet their mind. And like, it's not, because I was like that at the beginning. I'm like, well, I can't sit still long enough. And I can't, like, trying to do yoga. Well, I don't have time to move that slow. Like, it's like, finding baby steps that you can give them, little things to, maybe they can work up to meditation. Like, maybe first it's like, oh, go sit outside and look at the trees for 5 minutes, like, starting small. But I like that you said that finding what works for you may not work for somebody else. But I completely agree. The stress management piece, because you and I know, everybody listening here knows this too. Like, stress is the cause of everything. So obviously that's got to be the biggest piece we've got to accomplish. And I was telling a client of mine the other day, she's super stressed. She runs 2 companies and she's got kids, she's got a lot of stuff going on. And I'm like, dude, you can take all the supplements you want to make all the diet changes, but it's not going to do a dang thing if you're not managing your stress. Like, you're wasting your time, So it's huge.
Yeah, except that I think we often battle with that because it still feels easier to make the dietary changes than it is to say no to your kids having 3 after-school activities or saying no to that client. I can't take on that extra project now. It actually feels easier. Well, I just won't eat gluten and dairy and that'll be fine, but I'll keep, filling my calendar with too many things.
Right.
Yeah, like you say, counterproductive, but it's taken me a long time to learn that. And I think
for sure,
because those of us that end up with autoimmune thyroid conditions tend to, and obviously there's lots of exceptions, but tend to be that kind of person that wants to carry the weight of the world on our shoulder. And if it's, if it's going to be, it's up to me and it's all of that kind of personality, then it's really hard to let go of those things.
Yep.
And it's probably not until our health gets bad enough that we're forced to that we do.
It's very true.
Often.
Yeah, it's very true. Because that was the hardest piece for me too. It's like, I can eat healthy all day long. I can eat healthy and I can work out and I can, that was the biggest piece for me. And unfortunately, because I work with a lot of ladies in that realm of, they're high achievers and they're high performers and a lot of them are, they're perfectionists. And unfortunately it does take like for their health to kind of something to happen with their health, right? For the wake up call where it's like, and then by that time, it's not just one thing, it's like 12 different things because we've just kind of pushed it, in the back of our head, like, no, I'm fine. I'm just going to push through. And then you've got all these other things because it's snowballed into other things. But yeah, I agree with you that piece is because a lot of times too, it's like you're saying, like setting boundaries is a big thing. And that's hard for people, like setting boundaries and like actually having to like restructure some lifestyle things. Like that means big changes for people a lot of times. So yeah, it's a hard one.
I think there's a lot of expectations. Like I was thinking even just recently, we got to the end of last year, and the last few years has been crazy for the whole world for, obvious reasons. And I'm sure most of us around the world haven't had the same sort of breaks or holidays, that we've been used to having. And we got to the end of last year. I was like, I need a holiday. I need to get out of my house. I need to get away. And we had kind of 10 days heading down to Sydney for Christmas and went by the beach, which was beautiful and relaxing and some nice family time. I thought, great, I'll be ready to get back into everything in January. I've got some ideas for some different things I'm wanting to do this year. And I got back and I'm like, no, still need more time.
Yep.
I'm not. I was happy to kind of set some, go over my year and plan for that. But then I was like, no, I'm still not feeling. I knew my thyroid health had been a bit out because of some of those things. And I was like, and so instead of, this is where I've learned, I suppose, is instead of just going, come on, Annabel, it's mid-January, you've got to get into things. You've got to run your program in February because you always do that. And that's when everyone wants to kind of get onto everything. I'm just like, you know what? Actually, I don't have that in me and I have to practice what I preach. So I'm actually not going to run my program that I usually run in February. And I am just going to, my new idea I've got can get pushed further into the year because otherwise I'm starting not on empty, but I'm not starting on full.
On full, right.
Yeah. And that took some mental discipline, I suppose, to go, well, actually, no. And yes, I work for myself. So yes, I have an element of flexibility, but I think I've worked out too that over time I've chosen that.
Yeah.
I've chosen to work for myself. I could be back in my law job or working as a mediator or some of those other things, which are much more stressful, but I've chosen to not do that. And that also serves my health.
Yes.
So it's, and some of those are hard decisions, right? So, and it doesn't, but we learn gradually over time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I love that. And it totally takes self-discipline and it takes a strong will to like set those boundaries for yourself. So props to you for that. First of all, that's amazing. Cause I know that's hard because I'm the same way where I'm just like, just push through, just do it, so that's awesome that you're able to set those boundaries. So words to live by. Thank you for sharing that. So
that's okay. I've had plenty of times I've not done that. Let's just
yes.
So that's what I'm trying. That's my point is that I'm 25 plus years into living this thyroid journey. And so that's what I'm saying. Like if you can learn from my mistakes faster, then that's a lot of what I'm hoping in me sharing some of my stories and experiences. Like if you could pick that up, 6 months in, like, please do, because I don't want, you all kind of taking 25 years.
Yes, right. Exactly. Lessons. My husband calls that the dummy tax. Like, you learn from us so you don't have to make the same mistakes. It's the dummy tax. I love that. Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the next one, we talk about food. So we've talked a little bit on the show about gluten, but what other food recommendations can you give us for just kind of overall thyroid health and health management?
Yeah, I think my overall approach to the food part is it's taking an anti-inflammatory approach to food. So ultimately that's going to vary from person to person, but there are core categories of foods that are typically inflammatory, particularly typically inflammatory for people with autoimmune conditions. And so they're kind of like the big rocks. They're the easy places to start, like gluten, dairy, sugar, often grains, so not just gluten, but non-glutinous grains can be problematic. So I tend to say, look, a paleo-style approach to food is a good default. And it might not be, you might not follow a strict paleo diet all the time, but if that's like a bit of that's sort of where you spring back to, that's probably a good base point. And then everybody finds their own individual idiosyncrasies, I suppose, or own individual diet. I think in the end we have to find our own what works for us, and that takes time. So sometimes people kind of dive into the autoimmune protocol. That's not meant as a long-term thing, but it's kind of good. Do I feel better without eggs, or do I feel better, or does my gut just need a break from some of those nuts, seeds, those sorts of things, and then I can go back. And then also sometimes it's like, well, I just do want that piece of gluten-free cake while I'm out. So I'm just going to have that. And, okay, it's not paleo, but it's still meeting that baseline of gluten.
Right.
And if I'm not doing it too often, that's probably okay. But
Right.
I know for me, some of those little things kind of creep in over the Christmas period. And then which is why I usually run my 30-day Kickstart program in February, because it's like, all right, okay, we've kind of loosened up a bit. Now we just need to rein it back in a bit. And yeah. So, but in the end, for me, the approach is about reducing inflammation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can totally get on board with that. And that's kind of the approach I take with my clients too. It's for, our purposes, at least for our purposes, working together. And then, they want to reintegrate things afterwards, or kind of do it like, the 80-20 rule kind of thing. I don't know if you know who Dr. Mark Hyman is, but he always talks about, like, he has a book now called The Pegan Diet. And I love that because it's like the plant-based, plant-based, like in paleo and vegan, I guess, paleo and vegan. But I love that because I have the similar approach, same to you. It's just all about like reducing inflammation. So and like you said, I mean, it's being able to kind of manage it in the best way possible, majority of the time, but still enjoying life. So I like the approach. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I guess going back to that mindset piece, it can take a long time to get to that point. And I mean, even giving up gluten really took me years to do it properly, and completely.
Right.
And to really understand why it was important. So I think that also being kind to ourselves, because we do need to be able to find something that's sustainable. And that's why I talk about thyroid-friendly lifestyle. Yeah. A diet as a lifestyle. I'm not talking about go be paleo for 3 months and then go back to eating whatever you want. I'm talking about you have to find a dietary approach as opposed to a diet, a dietary approach that you can live with forever.
Right.
With a few little tweaks up and down, but that is your default. This is the way I eat.
Right. Right.
That's what we've got to find.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That can take time. And there are those sort of little, we're not robots and we do, we are going to deviate.
Yeah.
But I think it's having some baseline rules. For me, the main rule is no gluten.
Yeah.
And I know, you said you've had Whitney Morgan on. She's like I love her because she just calls it as it is. Can you reintroduce gluten? No.
No.
Can you have any gluten? No. Yeah, she's not trying, she does it in a really nice way. Yeah. But she's like, no.
That's it.
And so for me, that's my bottom line. Like if I'm out or if I'm traveling, I can, bend some of the other things.
Yeah.
But not gluten. And for me, I think that's easier.
Yeah.
It's much easier to say, I just don't eat gluten, because then when you're out, you're not debating every time. Well, maybe I could have that chicken schnitzel, or maybe I could have that burger, or, I haven't really had gluten for a while. Maybe, it's just like off the table, not a joke. It makes it easier. Just, I don't need it. Not an option. I look for the things that are an option.
That's it. Yeah. And if y'all want to know more about the gluten conversation, I think it's episode 111. So y'all can go back and listen to one with Whitney Morgan where she goes into like the science. But I am totally in agreement with you. And that's how I approach with my clients too, where it's like, this is a non-negotiable. Like the gluten thing, it's like, and I was having a conversation with a client the other day about that too, because she's struggling a little bit with some of the diet pieces. And I'm like, if you can just say gluten is, that's the big no, like we can work with the other stuff. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I like that you said too, and y'all take notes on that, because I like that you said it took you a while to go fully gluten-free. Like it wasn't like a cold turkey. And maybe some people can do that, go cold turkey, but you don't have to make it a cold turkey thing. Like we were saying at the beginning, like, give yourself some grace, and it's a process. You don't have to do it overnight, and giving yourself that grace period to like, okay, I'm working on it and eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. So then there's one other piece to the lifestyle area talking about the low tox living.
Yeah. So that's about just reducing our personal toxic load wherever we can. And again, it's a bit like the stress piece, that's going to look different for everyone. That I think that adds a lot of stress, that toxic burden. And so that's things like, chemicals that we eat in our food, and I suppose that's where, going back to the food, it's not just about anti-inflammatory. It really is about eating food as close to nature and, nutrient dense and non, I guess the bottom, or the base starting point is just eat real food.
Right.
Cut out the chemicals in your food, like all your flavors and colors and all of that. But it's also, and I think probably the thing that we don't realize it has that as much impact as it does is things like our personal care products, like our makeup and our skincare and air fresheners that we might have around the house. And, those sort of just passively breathing in toxins, or I can't remember the actual stats, but, women put some ridiculous number of chemicals on in their body in a given day, I think even. Yeah. So again, a bit like with the food, you don't have to do it all at once. But if over time you start addressing just controlling what you can control. Now, if I live in a city, I'm out, if I go for a walk around the block, then I'm breathing in some fumes from the cars. Well, there's not a lot you can really do about that.
Right.
But what I can control is what's in my house. Like my cleaning products are all naturally essential oil based. My makeup, I buy from companies that don't use artificial things and toxins. Like I make sure that I'm buying, clean makeup, clean skincare. I don't have scented candles in the house. Like even before I really knew about this, I'd go to places that are just, those sort of scented candles or incense sticks. And I'm just like, oh, I can't even walk in the store.
Right.
Like it just makes me feel sick.
Yes.
So no scented candles. I've replaced them with diffusers and essential oils. And so some of those replaced plastic kind of food storage with glass and drink out of a glass or a stainless steel water bottle, not a plastic. Even the BPA-free still have BPBs and other toxins. So just don't drink out of plastic. But again, you don't have to throw out everything that's under your sink and everything that's in your bathroom. But when your foundation runs out, look for a natural skincare company that does a nice foundation and switch that one thing.
Yep.
When your surface spray runs out, go buy a natural one. So I often say go to like an easy place to start is just go to a health food store, or the health food section of your supermarket. That's at least, they might not be perfect, but they're going to be a better option than your main kind of cleaning aisle in the supermarket.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And you can start to make switches.
Yep. Little by little.
That helps. Yeah. Reduce the toxic load, supports your liver, supports your thyroid. It's again, a bigger deal than we think it is.
Totally. Yep. 100%. And those things add up. I mean, like you're saying, it's just really all about, we're not going to be able to eliminate our toxic load, but it's just reducing it. And it really does add up with the amount of things that we're breathing in and putting on our skin and ingesting. So it definitely does make a huge difference. And I agree with you. I think it's underestimated how much that really affects our bodies and how well or not well our body's processing things. And I totally agree with that. Yeah. So I have a couple more questions as we're finishing up here. But can you tell us about where people can find out more about this specifically, where you talk about these four lifestyle areas, these core lifestyle areas, and your book, and where they can find where to get your book?
Yeah, thank you. Well, really I've got a podcast called Let's Talk Thyroid. I talk about these sorts of themes and all sorts of everything related to thyroid health, bring in great experts, people like you. So the podcast is a really easy place for people to start and get lots of free help.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great place to start. The book is also called Let's Talk Thyroid. So it's Let's Talk Thyroid, Positive and Practical Thyroid Help. It's available on Amazon. So if you just search on Amazon for Let's Talk Thyroid, you'll find it. That's probably the easiest thing. And my website's letstalkthyroid.com. So
perfect.
The only thing that's different with me at this point in time, I've sort of played around with lots of sort of changing things, but my Instagram and Facebook handle is annabel.bateman.wellness.
There you go.
So that's not,
Perfect. Yeah. And all of that will be, the links to all of that will be in the show notes. So y'all can go check it out and go check out Annabel's book for more help with your thyroid health management, all the other things that she talks about with lifestyle changes, because really and truly, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation with her, because it is about making lifestyle changes. Like it doesn't have to be like a death sentence to the meds, right? There are so many things that we can do. So you've shared so many tangible things. So hopefully y'all took notes or go back and take notes, because there's so many things to take away that y'all can start making now. Usually at the end, I'm like, can you list some things that we can start doing now? But you've already listed all these things. Like there's so many tangible things that people can take with them. So thank you for that. I do have one more question to ask you that I like to ask everyone as we finish up. What do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Oh, wow. That's a big question, isn't it?
It is.
Well, so here's my bottom line of what I believe our purpose in life is to be us in our world. I need to be me and the best version of me in the world in which I live. So amongst my family, friends, my sphere of influence. So I need to work out, well, what is the best version of being me? Like, what are my gifts, talents, abilities, personality? What do I have to offer the world? I really do believe that our purpose is about giving to others. And so, but I can't be you. Like, I can't look at what Hope Pedraza does and think, oh, I wish I was a bit more like that. Maybe if I just copy what she's doing and I do that in my world. No, it doesn't work that way. So be you in your world. That's my bottom line.
I love that so much. That's such, I don't think, I love hearing everybody's answers because everybody has such a different answer. And that's a topic that's never come up. And I love that perspective. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
That's all right. We're so unique. Like, I think we were created so uniquely. There's not another Annabel Bateman. There's not another person in the world with my DNA, my experiences. And so the world needs me just as much as it needs you and every person listening to be exactly who you are. And then we all work together, and that's how I believe it's meant to be.
We're all the different piece of the puzzle. I love that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Annabel. This was so great. Such a good conversation and so many tangible takeaways here for everybody. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insight and your wisdom on this and for sharing your time with us.
Yeah, my pleasure, Hope. It's been fun. I always love talking about these things. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I know how I can provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics that you want to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.